Scanning for audio.
Welcome to the Tin Dog Podcast. Today's Whooverville. Ah, yes. I've enjoyed the others, but this is going to be Whooverville 4. Now, if I manage to get there for 9 AM, I can interview Richard Franklin. And that's my aim. So, I was up at 5 AM. Which for many people is a bit of a struggle. But for me, well, you kind of get used to it when you've got a bundle of energy like me to contend with every day. So I'll keep you informed, and you'll get to hear the whole of the podcasters panel. Hopefully, should it go well. Back in a bit. Well, I made it here for 9 AM, and I managed to get involved in the Richard Franklin interview, which is brilliant. What a great guy. Now, apparently today I'm interviewing an extra who's been in lots and lots of episodes of Doctor Who, and he's also a massive fan. Looking forward to that. And of course, I've got a fairly big name to interview as well. It's Peter Purves. Now, both of those interviews are going to be quite long, so they'll be saved until after this series of Doctor Who's been broadcast. Kind of looking forward to that. Oh, I think it's time for the podcasters panel.
Wouldn't be the same, would it? Wouldn't be. By the way, it's lunchtime. If you want to go and get lunch, we're used to it. Okay, some surprise lunches. From the right.
Hello, my name's Michael and I have your mic.
Tim, give him a microphone.
Hello, my name's Michael. I'm the host of the Tin Dog Podcast, as you can probably guess. I've been podcasting for ages. I am a solo podcaster because I have no friends. Here are my other friends. No, I'm Hustler.
Hello, I'm Paul, and I'm host of the Pannel podcast. Actually, I'm host of the Davros project, or one of the hosts anyway, and this is someone else.
I'm Tim. I do a podcast called Tim's Take On. I'm going to be busy tonight because Doctor Who's back on, so I'll be reviewing it as quickly as possible.
I'm Luke of the minute Doctor Who podcast, which is a video podcast that started in Russia, but now it's based back in the UK.
I'm James from Doctor Who Podshock, although, you know, I'm more sporadically on these days because of work constraints and things, but there you go.
I'm Sputters from the Dirty Brothers Doctor Who podcast.
And I'm Lucy Fisher from the Doctor Who podcast.
I'm Sean from the Flashing Blade podcast and sat down there because he's lazy.
No, because we've got a bad back. I'm Thomas from the DWO Whocast.
Right, now, in the past, we've all been asked, how did we get into podcasting, etc. Let's go slightly different. Why did you get into podcasting, and why are you still podcasting? So we'll start with Thomas and move backwards.
Oh, okay, going over. I got into it because Dave asked me. David also does the DWO Whocast, and we did another podcast called PDAS Presents, which we still do. And he was looking, I suppose, to lighten the load a bit, so he wanted somebody else. And he said, "Would you like to do it?" And I thought, yeah, well, okay, I'll do it.
Intelligence to it.
Sorry?
You brought some intelligence to it.
I try and bring some intelligence to it, yes. Not always possible, but I do my best sometimes. And why do I still do it? Well, it's because it's still new. When I get bored, I'll stop.
Well, I suppose I got into it because, firstly, because I have a massive ego which needs constant stroking. And I'm still doing it because people listen, and that's the nicest thing I think about it, is when you see the listener numbers racking up, and you realise that people are actually interested in what you have to say, or interested in listening to what you've got to say, whether they like it or not.
I find it a bit bizarre that people do listen, to be honest. Yeah, really odd.
I love the fact that you usually, when people say, "Hi, I listened to the Dirty Who's podcast," your response, Nick, is, "I'm terribly sorry."
We were the first, I think we were the first 18-rated Doctor Who podcast, which is a rather dubious distinction, obviously. I started because of this man here. These guys, Podshock, did an event in Second Life, where I met a lot of other Who geeks, basically. People like us who want to talk about Doctor Who, want to reminisce, want to enjoy the programme. And it was a whole world I'd never seen before. From being a kid and growing up with Doctor Who, it was something new, and that's why I still do it. It's an excuse to get together with my mates from all over the world. There's 2 Americans, 2 lads, 2 lasses, 2 English people, 4 of us. And it's an excuse to sit down and froth about Doctor Who, and if somebody wants to listen to that, awesome.
Oh, it's me next, is it? Well, I only started podcasting about Doctor Who. I did my own podcast first, and I mainly did it because I was very lonely. I didn't have anybody to speak to about Doctor Who.
Michael.
Yeah, at the time, yeah. But I mean, it was more when I was at uni and nobody else. It was the days before the show had aired, the new series that is, and nobody seemed to know or care about Doctor Who. And I was really excited about the fact that the series was coming back. And Lewis in America was listening, one of the very few people who did in those days, and he probably still do. And he invited me, he said, "Do you want to come on to a podcast about Doctor Who?" And I thought, can we really talk about Doctor Who for about half an hour, once a week? And about then, when we first did the first show, and it's like 5 hours later, and we've got to edit it down, we thought, yeah, we might have something here. Provided somebody listens to it, so there we go. That's me now.
Can I pass this back to Keith as he's at the end? Keith, the question is, why did you get into podcasting, and why are you still podcasting?
Because I was asked, and because it's fun. I enjoy myself. I would be having these conversations whether the microphone is there or not. In fact, I do have these conversations when the microphone isn't there. So may as well just record them and hear my own waffle and hear how sad and depressed I am.
Sometimes there's other people around when you have the conversations. Though.
Yeah, I usually talk to myself in 2 tones of voices. So it's it goes downhill from there.
Well, similarly to James, I started podcasting. I did a podcast called the Cat Among the Pigeons podcast, which I started while I was living in Russia. It was partly just to keep people up to date back home with what I was doing. And eventually ended up being a video thing as well. It's not really worth checking out, but there is an episode in which I share a Cadbury's caramel bar with a version of myself. So the illusion is that there's one chocolate bar being shared between 2 people. Actually, it's one person eating 3 chocolate bars.
Is there a link between podcasters and schizophrenia?
Podcasting chocolates.
I think it's more the chocolate.
Yeah, and at the same time as I was making my own podcast, I was listening to podcasts like Podshock and the WhoCast and stuff like that, and I thought, I'll give that a go. What's my niche? Michael had found his niche of being short, and I thought, I'll be short and do video. And that's where it came from. It's just me having a lot of fun, and I still do it because of all these guys. Like I started off on my own in a foreign country. I'm now back here, and I get to meet all these guys all the time doing podcasty things, and that's why I do it, because my audience is tiny.
We try to be short, but it sort of gets away with us.
Yeah.
Well, to concentrate on my podcast that's now a Doctor Who podcast, when it started off back in 2008, it was kind of an escape from another podcast I was doing. It was very narrow in its audience because it was about Second Life. Nick was listening. And I did over 60 episodes of this podcast about Second Life. It's called Living in Second Life. It's still out there somewhere. And might do another episode by the end of the year. So I wanted to do a podcast that wasn't about Second Life. And initially, it was inspired by, I'm trying to remember the name of the podcast now. mine's a blank. But anyway, it was inspired by one of the podcasts I'd heard where one day he got one of these portable audio recorders and he just literally went for a walk and talked. And I thought, there's something there, I could do that in some way. And this kind of morphed into me back in 2008 launching Tim's Take On as initially, I'll go to the cinema and then I'll do on-the-spot movie reviews straight after you've seen the film. Didn't work out as well as I thought, because you walk out the cinema and your opinion hasn't fully formed at that point. And this slowly morphed into what it is 13 weeks a year or however long Doctor Who runs these days, where I'll watch Doctor Who and then I'll do an immediate reaction, first thoughts review, which will be online tonight. I'm a busy guy. And other things that happen with it is I'm here today doing the odd interview and the recorder gets dragged along to various conventions and panels are recorded and then you think, what am I going to do to fill the other weeks of the year? So I went to the DVD shelf and I've been re-watching Christopher Eccleston's era. So if you want to hear very short reviews of the Christopher Eccleston era, just search for Tim's Take On Google and there's plenty out there already.
All plug.
Can I interrupt quickly? Mind, can I interrupt quickly?
No, not at all. Do you need the mic, Steve?
This just might be my chance to say it. Because just on behalf of Whooverville, I want to say thank you to our podcaster colleagues who have just been the most tremendous support right from the beginning of when we first started doing Whooverville 4 years ago. And it wouldn't be Whooverville without the podcasters. And it wouldn't be, well, it probably wouldn't happen without the podcasters because the amount of free publicity we get from these guys is fantastic. And I thank you deeply from the bottom of my heart for everything you've done for Whooverville, even when you're slagging us off for having a sponsored guest, Siobhan. Thank you very much for that. Really helpful. Anytime, I know. But no, it's really, and if you are not, I suspect because you're in here today, you're probably podcast listeners. But if you're not, why not? Why not? Listen to these guys, they're fantastic. I'm sorry to have interrupted your panel. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart. Thanks ever so much.
Can I take this moment as well and thank James of the Doctor Who podcast, who has done a lot of work behind the scenes and doesn't want to be embarrassed, but I'm doing it anyway. Because he's put a lot of things together, put the schedule behind everything, so it wouldn't be fair to kind of, I've just shown up here today because, I was asked and it's fantastic to come along, but James has done all the work behind the scenes, really, so.
I so badly want to ruffle my hair.
Please didn't be.
Where are we up to, Paul?
Right, we got into Doctor Who podcasting because we used to attend a Doctor Who pub meet in London at a place called the Fitzroy Tavern. And yes, marvellous place. And after a couple of months, we realised there was this pocket of people just talking on themselves, by themselves, and we were sort of shoved off to the side. Wondering, why is this? Why are we not good enough to talk to these people? And it transpired that they all had bloody podcasts. So the only way we could get into this pocket of people and have something to talk about was to do a podcast. So that's why we did it, to fit in with all the other people who were doing it. Everyone's bleeding doing it, but why are we still doing it? Because it's a tremendous excuse to give to your wife to gather with your friends on a Sunday evening and drink copiously and talk about geeky crap, which is tremendous fun. And also to get to meet these guys and come to something like this is, well, a bit of an honour really, and it makes you feel incredibly embarrassed, which is why I'm going to pass the microphone to Michael.
Why did I get into it in the first place? Well, I had a girlfriend who lived 2 hours away from my house and I had to listen to something and I'm a skinflint, so I downloaded podcasts rather than buying music on my iPod, and I listened to Podshock, and after a while I thought, I might not be able to be as good as them, but I think I could do it. Why would someone listen to me rather than them? I know, they're 2.5 hours long. I'll be 10 minutes.
It's nice to see that everybody's... We're niche enough as it is, but we've got niches within niches.
Oh, completely. Soon I'm sure there'll be a video podcast doing just cosplay or whatever. Every single bit of Doctor Who fandom is so big that you can have a podcast just for whatever you want. But at the beginning there was only you and then Radio Free Star and me, and there was a handful of people doing it.
And it was like that for quite a while, actually.
It was.
Until people thought, hold on, why are these guys talking to...
Why am I listening to some Geordie when I could be doing it myself? It's just some bloke with a recorder. Anyone could do that. And then you all emailed me and said, how do I do that? 102 podcasts, and we're not exaggerating. Just about Doctor Who. It's ridiculous.
We'll talk about that in a moment. Why are you still doing it?
Why am I still doing it? Well, I get free DVDs from the BBC. And I did intend stopping podcasting once the range finished, because I thought, I don't need them anymore. Now, that sounds fairly self-centered, but I don't have a job or an income, so it was the only way I could legitimately get the discs. And then I discovered I really enjoyed it. But most importantly, it's because I get to hang around with these people, and I get to have them as friends. And that's really important because, like I said, I ended up marrying this girlfriend, and I moved away from a lot of my friends who were in the northeast. And these people are now my friends who I can talk about Doctor Who with, and that's really important to me. So that's why I still do it, because I've made some friends. And also without them, and I don't want to plug it at all, I wouldn't have written a book, and I wouldn't have it out there, and I wouldn't have been doing these things at all, because they just developed as part of my show, and my show had listeners. How did that happen? And people sort of, I tried to retire from podcasting about 2 years ago, and I got so many emails that week that I just thought, this is ridiculous. I'm enjoying it. Let's just knock it back a little bit. So that I wanted to finish a novel on something else. And then I've got so much positive feedback from so many people from around the world. People saying, oh, I was listening to you while I was on a bike up Mount Fuji. What? What? And I got one from you while you were still in Russia, saying, oh, I'm in Russia, and I'm listening. Russia? What? I'm just some bloke. But the positive feedback that you get, admittedly, it strokes your ego, and that's not always a healthy thing.
Can I stroke your ego and say, I'm really glad that you're still podcasting and you didn't give up?
Well, thank you. I am really glad I didn't give up as well, because I've got so much out of it since that time that I am glad, because things aren't always brilliant. Everybody's lives have stuff going on, and when you've got a podcast that you know you've got to get out, but you feel obliged deep down that you've got to get one out, and it's ridiculous. But you still keep going, you still do it. You try and get 3 or 4 of them if you can, so that your output's always regular. And it's just stupid. You're thinking, who am I doing this for? You're doing it to yourself. No, you don't.
Roughage.
Yes. Well, that's it. I'll just give up podcasting and take up brand. So that's one of the reasons I keep doing it, because I like everyone else who does it. We're all kind of jolly nice people. Mostly.
Okay, quick one. We'll start Mark, I'll come back.
Okay.
What have you learned from podcasting?
That not everyone's as nice as you think they are. Hang on, seriously though, what have I learned? I've learned a lot of technical stuff. It's kept my hand in. I've learned about outputs. Like I said, I've learned a lot of technical stuff. I had no idea about audio content. My background was in video and theatre, and I sort of ignored the audio side, so I threw myself into a bit of research. I bought Podcasting for Dummies, not promoting it at all, but it was the book to get at the time, because it was the only one that said, buy Audacity, you don't have to buy it, it's free. So I got free, that's for me. So I got that, and it's like, get which audio equipment to buy. It's ridiculous. If you'd seen us all downstairs this year and last year, the minute we arrived, we all go, what recorder have you got this year? It's just ridiculous. It's like some sort of arms trade fair show. Everyone's just going, oh, I'm still using the Zoom 1. Oh, the Zoom 1, I don't need to touch up the bar. It's like that. It's ridiculous. And there's far too many Zoom 2s out there.
They're cool.
Sorry.
Zoom 2s are cool.
Yeah, exactly. Zoom 2s are cool, but I can't afford one. So yeah, that's what I've learned, and that's what I do, so I'll pass it back.
Right, what have I learned from podcasting? I've learned a fantastic excuse to give to your wife. I've learned a lot technically about how to do podcasts, how to edit, because boy, oh boy, I mean, when you download a podcast, I don't think people realise how much actual work goes into it. It's like 6-7 hours every week just to do editing and recording and that. And it's a pain, but it's a nice pain. It's like the injection you get at the dentist. It's painful, but it's nice. I can't really think of what else I've learned. I've learned these chats are lovely. I've learned that professional journalists will steal anything you manage to get a scoop on. Fact. And well, that's about it, really. I'll pass it on to Tim.
Everyone keeps going on about technology, and I think I still make my podcast pretty much the way I made it back in 2008. I record it. I try to keep the editing to a minimal thing, because there are episodes, and they're out there. There's one, episode 75, where I went a bit clip crazy, and I started grabbing clips from various places, and I spent about a whole Saturday morning editing it, and I got up, and by lunchtime it was finished. But I get like that. I get a bit OCD about editing. If I'm starting on it, I've got to finish the damn thing. It's hard to say what it's taught me, really. I guess people and places inspire me, I guess, because when you're, like Michael, on your own and you don't have anyone to bounce off, you come up with different ways of doing things. I mean, Michael every year does his solo con. Yes. which is quite fun. He does what's it like to have a convention on your own?
Have a convention on your own, in your own house. You have to leave the house and then go back in. And you have to have a very well-stocked fridge full of beer. That's the primary.
How does LobbyCon work at that?
LobbyCon's the hallway. I've actually given this far too much thought.
I think my version of this is that once a year I have a weekend break in Cardiff, and have done since 2008, and I always record a podcast while I'm there. And you think, how are you going to record a podcast just because you're in a city? Well, they make Doctor Who round there, so a little bit of research will teach you that there's quite a few filming locations within walking distance of the city centre. And so, yeah, I go off and I find places. This year I found a place called Llandaff Fields, which is about a half-hour walk from Cardiff Central Station, and is a beautiful park, quite large park, lots of tree-lined paths, and it was used quite briefly in the episode Love and Monsters. Yes, that all-time classic.
I'm not being on stage with anyone discussing Love and Monsters.
You have no poetry in your soul.
That's a good episode. I like it anyway, but
yeah. Luke.
I've learnt how badly the Polish actors and Sylvester McCoy murdered a Russian in Curse of Fenric. One of my very early episodes, the guy who's helping me learn Russian while I was out there, I got him to work out what it was that people were saying at the beginning, and it should be something along the lines of Kapitani my patriali wtoroju słodku, which is subtitled as Captain, we've lost the others. It actually means Captain, we've lost the second dinghy. Bear that in mind the next thing I want to go. But also, being overseas for 3 years, I guess I lost a lot of my inhibitions, because when you go into foreign culture, you quickly learn that they all think you're weird anyway, and so you just have permission to be strange. And in that environment, I was like, I don't really care going online and being an idiot talking about Doctor Who, and that just kind of enabled me to start off and be me, really. And I think that's partly what Doctor Who podcasting has helped me to do, is just to be who I am. And for some bizarre reason, people like watching that online. If you can tell me why, then let me know. Yes, actually, people think that's kind of some kind of magic with the whizzing Target novel covers. If you haven't seen it, it's quite cool. Thanks. He's just blowing his own trumpet.
I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I've learned all sorts of things, but the thing that I've learned which really resonates, and it's kind of something, obvious really, I've learned that Doctor Who fans are the best fans in the world, and I've been a Trekkie and all sorts of sci-fi, but yeah, exactly. But really, I think it's about the fans really, and just getting together and having a chat and having a laugh, and everyone's so friendly and lovely. Really, that's all I'm going to say.
I've got to agree with James. I think of everything. I've realised that I'm kind of not alone. I've also learned a lot more about Doctor Who. An awful lot more, because you have to do a bit of research, you have to know what you're talking about. And I've always kind of superficially looked at Fred and loved it. I've learned that there's other people just as bloody sad as I am. And that's fantastic. It's a great thing to know. I can get together with my friends and these guys here and talk shit.
I suppose I've learned two things. And the first is how many times I say when I'm speaking. Because when you come to edit a podcast, I think I lose about 15 minutes on each 45-minute episode just cutting those out. So you learn a lot about yourself and how you communicate with other people. And you realise sometimes you have those moments where you've offended someone, and entirely unintentionally, and you go away not realising why. And sometimes it's to do with your intonation and the way you said something, or the way you phrase it. And when you spend hours and hours editing yourself with your own voice in your own head, you begin to realise why. And then you can change your behaviour. And so it actually has improved my life immeasurably. And the second thing I learned is how to turn your ensuite toilet into a recording studio, using lots of duvets and things to soften the noise. The toilet's covered, it's no longer functional. Yes, there's a pot plant. And also, once I'd done this, I turned it into basically it was a shrine shed. It's bordering shrine. I moved all the Doctor Who stuff that I've got in the flat into this tiny room, and it does occasionally when I walk into it. It's only very tiny. I open the door, and it feels like when you go to a serial killer's house and you find their shrine.
All the time.
Yes. So occasionally I scare myself, but I've got a lot better at talking to people.
Well, I'm afraid what I've learned isn't as profound and as deep as these people. What I've learned is not to be freaked out when I hear Adam and Crumbly's voice coming from my bedroom, where my wife's in there at about 11 o'clock at night, because that's when she edits the podcast. I have learned to enunciate more, and most importantly, engage my brain before I speak. And the final thing is, I think, not to get freaked out when people I've never met and don't know anything about come up to me and say, I love what you do, I love it, it's great, who the hell are you? So that's a couple of things I've learned.
About in Morrison's, that's when Dave turned up. You from Sundry Shores? Yes. You from Flashing Blade? Yes.
Lost into a gaff.
Well, you also learn how to take a head of a former doctor through customs.
Yes.
We haven't said hello.
Oh yes, hello.
Sweet.
And I've got black magic cults right in
Was he hand luggage?
He was hand luggage.
It was excellent. You can see the eyes.
He made it through airport security, and they managed to get him on late night American television.
Craig Ferguson show. And your bottom.
And my bottom, yes. My bottom has appeared internationally.
Thomas.
Mainly what I've learned are all the technical bits. I work in a school and I teach information technology to very young children, some as young as 4. And we're taking what I have learned from podcasting. We produced our own talking book last year, where they wrote a story and they typed it in, and then we recorded them and edited their voices and got it to actually sort of now that they could sit and watch themselves talking back, and that made podcasting worthwhile to me.
That's been magic.
Passing it on to the next generation.
Okay, now we've got some time left, so what I want to do is do a typical podcast discussion, which means it's going to be a free-for-all. Yeah, so clone each other for microphones. 50th anniversary. And feel free to join in. If you've got any questions or anything you want to say, stick a hand up and someone with better legs than me will run out and cross the microphone under your face. So the 50th anniversary, first question, what do we want to see? Someone?
All the doctors.
Well, yeah.
Some people are dead.
I'm not necessarily up to a multiple Doctor story. I want them to be in it, but not necessarily playing the Doctor.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, they did it in Big Finish the Greatest. They had them all in there, but they only had one Doctor. And that was interesting.
Yeah, you don't
It was interesting.
But I love this Time War as well.
Well, yeah,
I like to see a resolution on what the Time War actually was.
Well, there's two schools of thought. One, it's better in your imagination.
Yeah, true.
But secondly, it's the production team. Would they go back and do it? Would they get McGann? Would they get Eccleston?
We can't alter anything.
What about Eckersley?
Yeah, true.
It's got to be a worthy thing.
Yeah, it's got to be a worthy thing. We all desperately want to see it. It's a great excuse. You know, I mean, it'd be nice to have a theme behind it as well, like Silver Anniversary had Silver Nemesis, but God knows what that would be for 50.
Golden Death of the Cybermen. 7 Golden Deaths. What about having them get together and have a good old Barney and an argument like the Three Doctors, the comedy show, rather than trying to do something different with them, which everybody tries to do ever since the Three Doctors? What about getting them back together and just having them have fun?
Men.
Yeah.
Men.
Really? I mean,
I'm not a big fan of Doctor Who as a comedy programme. Yeah. That's a whole different podcast for me.
Okay.
I think Terrence Dick should write it.
They'd have to change most of the production process for that to happen.
Yeah, Terrence Dick should write it. He was script editing the Three Doctors. He wrote the 5 Doctors. The two Doctors. Least said about that, the better.
Apparently it's going to be a video, wasn't it?
Yeah, apparently it's an Ian Levine production.
The monster will be green, though.
And we can finally get to see the terrible Zodian and her followers who bounce around like kangaroos. I mean, that's what I want. That's why I want the 50th anniversary. So.
Anybody else? What do you want to see?
Well, I'd want to see the Doctors come back, and I think this is a key difference between us on our side of the Atlantic and possibly some of the American fans, is that because we're geographically closer and culturally closer to the production team, and I've no doubt we watch it as close as other fans around the world, we get a feeling for things, and them all coming back, I'm not feeling it's going to happen. But I'd welcome any of them back, whether it's Tennant, whether it's Eccleston, whether it's brief, whether it's large, but to definitely have more than one Doctor in the 50th story. And speaking as a Dalek fan, yes, there's Daleks on telly tonight, speaking as a Dalek fan, it would be nice to mark the 50 years of the Daleks in some way as well. So to bring the Daleks into it, either as a main plot or...
Time War, aren't we?
Yeah, we're back to Time War again, aren't we? But, yeah.
I think Tennant's all right confirmed it publicly. That's going to come back. Why? I'm sorry, I'm so sorry.
But this is the trouble, is that there's over a year till this will go out, because you can pretty much lay money on the fact that they'll put it out in the anniversary month of November. And so that's over a year for fans to speculate and start rumours. Oh, let's start one now. Anyone want to start a rumour?
Anybody got any rumours they want to start spreading? We'll put it on our shows. Anybody? Come on, give us a rumour. Give me the mic. Call it the offer of twos. Go on. One man. Run.
Nobody?
Nobody's got a rumour they want to start. This is Doctor Who fandom, for heaven's sakes.
Dalek Emperor, anybody?
I'm trying to get them up.
Going back to the Hartnell console.
Go back to the Hartnell console. Oh, that's a good one. The Hartnell console.
Classic era console room.
Yeah.
Shall we
The
start
white
this off on our
bands.
podcast? As a rumour?
Yes.
Okay, we'll say it's a rumour.
Legitimate rumour.
Piece of history. You've seen a rumour start.
Okay, so
Right here, right.
I will be checking.
Well, for me, I think I'd love to see everyone who's still alive, or indeed dead, but fine, if there's tribulations, trials, and that kind of Star Trek, old footage, new stuff, very handy. Use a big plastic head, not a problem. Ask Mr. Levine if he can help in any way,
Shape or form.
at all. I'm sure he'll be able to find anyone who can do the voice. I've heard the documentary, it's brilliant, yes. I've got a nice ventriloquist doing whatever you want to do, that's fine. But like you said, probably play it straight. For me, I think I'd like to see the Three Doctors, the new Three Doctors, the last three. And I would also like to see, in my head there was a lovely story where you had the current Doctor sees that it's time, travels back to take on the ultimate villain, who eventually discovers McGann, who he has to defeat and destroy because McGann's trying to bring back Gallifrey after the Time War, which leads into the whole thing. But like you said, you can't do that because it's a different production company. We're fans and we don't care. And at the very end, the 11th Doctor has to kill the 8th Doctor and make him regenerate into Eccleston, and he leaves a rose on his chest.
Doctor, Sixth Doctor.
Brilliant.
Michael, I think we're listening to the plot of your next book.
No,
Let's get the plug in now, the proper plug.
all right. Time
On
for
November the 23rd,
Yes.
okay, Michael's done a book, Whostrologies. Every single date in the calendar?
366 days of the year are covered. Yes, on the 29th of February there was one episode of Doctor Who broadcast in the entire 50-year history on the 29th of February. I did find out. I sat down and watched every single episode of Doctor Who and was sarcastic about all of them in a small way. Laid them all out in a lovely spreadsheet, worked out which days they were on, took those sentences, restructured them so that I could have a made-up, tongue-in-cheek astrological reading for every day of the year. Now, Doctor Who wasn't on every day of the year, and the most obscure one is October the 3rd. I managed to find something that had happened. On October the 4th, Verity Lambert and Wallace Hussein are taken by Sidney Newman out to a Chinese restaurant for a chat to say, that was lovely, do it again. And October the 3rd's reference is about booking the restaurant. So as you can see, not everything is as in-depth as some of the readings, but there is a 20, if you want me to read out the 20.
Yes, let's hit November 20.
Right, so this book itself comes out on Halloween. It's ready.
Who's publishing it?
Tell us, lovely Dave. Give it to you now, so I shall find it, which will take me a minute because I'm low on batteries.
Well, we talked about what we would like to see. What about what we wouldn't like to see?
Boilerplate.
That was what I was going to say. That or the Candyman or the Zarbi.
I'm just too predictable. I am so sorry. It's just the obvious candidates.
What?
What's wrong with the Zarbi? Yeah, don't care about the Zarbi. What's wrong with the Right, I'm with you. So the reading for. I haven't got an iPad, I'm sorry. Right, November the 23rd. There we are. Here's the reading. Now, on this day, if I can just... Oh, PDF reader, thank you. Right. On this day, the episodes 1000 BC, Episode 1, The Invasion, Episode 4, Dragonfire, Episode 1, and of course, Silver Nemesis, Episode 1, was shown. Alright. An elfin girl will lead you into more trouble than you can ever imagine. An inquiring mind and a sensitive ear will only let you go so far. A little emotion is a wonderful and dangerous thing, as a new person will enter your life and make things totally ace. Once again, there is no time for straight blowing. As a long-time appointment has been forgotten. And as you can see, I think that says a lot.
Is there literally one for every day?
There is one for every single day. And at the end, I've done a Chinese version of the astrology as well. So there is 1963 is the year of the meddlesome teachers. And goes through, including the wilderness years. As you can see, I spent far, far too long on this. The first version of the book was just me being sarcastic about the first, well, it wasn't even 200 episodes then when I started it. The last Olympics was on when I handed in that manuscript. And Dave said, could you do one for every day of the year? And I went, oh, that won't be much of a hassle. It was just me being sarcastic about every story, which was fine. I did that without thinking, just off the top of my head. This version, so much more in depth. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. And thanks to podcasting and a bit of support, I've actually finished it. So thank you. And you are, in fact, the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance is thanked at the back of the book because it actually was good help.
Can people still get astrologies from you?
Yes, if you really want your own personalised one, God help you. You can get one by visiting whoastrology.com. Just follow one of the links. Everything's there. There's even an example of the illustrations. It's been illustrated by Deborah Taylor. Every single page. They're fantastic drawings. She works on Terrible Zodian, fanzine. Again, more fan content that we've all made contacts with. It's brilliant, but it wouldn't have been possible without David Sheehan. That was the plug. Thank you for that. But either way, it's reasonably funny, I would say. And thanks so much.
Anybody else want to plug anything?
That's a quick question. Is there anybody here who's thinking about going into podcasting?
And if not, why not?
Yeah.
There are too many.
All you need is a microphone.
No, that's very wise.
Good man.
I'm going to say, I'm a teacher as well. I teach geography.
There's a microphone.
How many teachers are here today? Just incident.
1, 2,
3. The year of the, what was it, teachers?
Meddlesome teachers.
I was just saying how easy is it to do it in schools, really? Because
it's very easy to do. I mean, to be honest, we just simply use Skype.
We use a package called Pannel to record the Skype, and then we use Audacity to edit it. It's rough and ready, but it's so easy to do. And I'd say that to anybody, if you have got a predilection to try out podcasting, do it. There might be 100 odd podcasts, but there is space for more. There's space for any niche.
I would go so far as to say, look, all you have to do is just sit down in front of a microphone and chat to yourself. That's what I'm sure Michael does, that's what Tim does, that's what I'm doing occasionally. It's simple, it really is simple, and the editing you'll pick up yourself, but you don't need to do too much if you don't want to. Just go out there, download Audacity, which is free, it'll run on Apple, it'll run on Linux, it'll run on Windows. Just get a microphone, do that. You can go to a site called Podbean, and that'll host it free of charge. Put it onto iTunes, just download it for nothing, and then get in touch with the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance, and we'll put you up on the site. Just do it, just enjoy yourselves.
If you want to do it in schools, what we use are the speakeasy, the yellow microphones, and you can get them singly or in sets that will all plug into a hub and can be recharged. They come with Audacity. They're incredibly easy to use. After one lesson in the top class, the 10-year-olds could record themselves, edit themselves, show me how to change the frequency so that your voice went up and down and you got quicker and slower and louder. So basically you plug children into the microphones and they will show you what to do. Wonderful.
Children have to have USB connections.
Oh, children are not only wind powered, but yes, they come these days with their own USB port.
Okay, before we go, because I think our time's running out, want to plug the website. Now, we were saying there's about 102 podcasts on the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance website. The address for that is www.doctorwhopodcastalliance.org. You can go in there, you can link to the websites of all the different podcasts, dive in and take your pick, basically. See what tickles your fancy. You won't obviously be able to listen to all of them, but there's so many different genres of podcasts.
Sensible, silly,
rude.
Drunk.
Yeah, drunk.
Musical for the Utcast.
Oh yeah, musical for the Utcast. Useful.
No, not
useful. But go up there and enjoy it. And like I say, do it yourselves, frankly. Yeah. Are we done?
I think
so. Thank you to the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance as well, because it does give a lot of work.
As Adam.
Stand up.
Stand on, take credit. In the backgrounds.
Thank you all for listening. If you don't,
absolutely.
And for being here.
Right, shall we go away?
Yes. Cheers, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, that's the last of the interviews done for the day. I've had an utterly fantastic time. Thanks to Steve Hatcher for organising. It's such a brilliant convention. It's just us, the fans, talking to people who we love. It's fabulous. It's the kind of tiny opposite of Gallifrey, and yet it's still got the same heart. It's lovely. On the way home, I intend listening to the end of Black and White, so I'll be reviewing that very shortly. But tonight, it's Asylum of the Daleks, and that I am looking forward to. If only I can stay awake. Can I just say before I go that I had a brilliant time in catching up with all of the podcasters. I haven't seen Siobhan forever, and it was absolutely brilliant to see her. It was brilliant to see James and just everyone. Oh, and Chris, of course, who I went to university with. And, well, let's just hang around and name check everyone, shall we? Hello, Mr. Chin. Hello, Nat, who I didn't get to chat to this time. Right, I'll leave now before I just alienate everyone. I really must spend more time with the Staggering Stories crew. Look, farewell. Be seeing you. You have been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are copyright of the BBC. No infringement is intended. To contact the show, email tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk. To order or simply find out more about the book Whostrology, the Time Traveller's Almanac, visit whostrology.com. The Tin Dog Podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.